Would you like to get your bookkeeping completely out of the way so that you can concentrate on running your business? Would you like to spend the absolute least amount of time doing bookkeeping so that you can turn your full attention to running your business and making it flourish? Well, then you need to take this course, QuickBooks Online Crash Course. It's the fastest and easiest way to learn QuickBooks Online. You will quickly and easily learn how to record all the transactions from your bank and credit card statements into QuickBooks so that QuickBooks can turn around and quickly and easily give you all the financial reports you need. You will quickly and easily be able to generate a profit and loss report that shows how well your company did during a period of time. You'll also be able to generate a balance sheet that compares what your company has to what your company owes so that you can easily see the financial position of your company. My name is Mark Smolin. I'm the founder and CEO of Worldwide QuickBooks. I personally guarantee you the clearest possible explanation for only the topics that a small business owner needs to use QuickBooks to run their business and keep their financial records. This tutorial will not waste 1 second of your time with a topic that you don't need the way all the other Introduction to QuickBooks Online tutorials will do. And if that's not enough, you have the benefit of a live teacher because I answer all my students' questions immediately if you simply leave any question you have in the comments section below. That's right. Just by watching a little of this YouTube tutorial every day, you will have everything your small business needs to manage your books and records using QuickBooks Online, and it's all free, free, free.
Chapter 2. How can this be so fast and easy?
How can I promise you that you will learn so much in such a short period of time? Well, that's because most small companies only need one area of data. They only need one set of records, and it's called the general ledger. The computer calls it the chart of accounts, and in the days before the computer, it was simply the main book, the main place that you would record your transactions, and each page in the book was simply a different set of transactions that you would record. You see, if you were a large corporation, you would need an in-house bookkeeper because there would be other areas of data to manage in addition to the general ledger. Large companies need to keep track of which customers owe them and what the continuous running balance is of each customer. Large companies even owe their vendors who give them service for several months at a time and have to keep records of which vendor is owed for what bill and why. In fact, some companies even sell merchandise and they need a separate area of records just to keep track of their profit and their quantity on hand. But if you're a typical small business owner, you don't need any of that. All you have to keep records of are the transactions in the general ledger. That's why this crash course is going to make things so easy and smooth for 99% of small business owners that only really need to do the minimum amount of bookkeeping. I suggest that if you need one of the other areas of data, you finish this course first so that it gives you a nice foundation and a nice overview of QuickBooks Online. Once you finish this course, that should make it easier to self-teach any of the other areas of QuickBooks that I just mentioned, and only if you need it in the future. You see, doing bookkeeping with only the general ledger in a small business is a very smooth process. All you have to do is pull out your bank and credit card statements that pertain to the company and record each transaction one by one into the data input windows that QuickBooks Online provides for you to record your bank and credit card transactions. Once you record them into the proper windows in QuickBooks, QuickBooks will record them into the general ledger. And the QuickBooks General Ledger, which QuickBooks calls the chart of accounts, is behind the scenes. And it's processing the information in the same way that they used to process it in the days before the computer. The General Ledger gives you the ability to organize and summarize your financial transactions so that they can place them on a main report called the trial balance. Now, the trial balance is simply a list of each account in the chart of accounts with their name and the current ending balance. But it's that report you need to pull off the numbers and put onto the financial statements that you're going to give your accountant so your accountant can do all the taxes that your small company needs. And some of the numbers in the trial balance get placed on the balance sheet, and some of the numbers get placed on the profit and loss. But all of them get placed on either one so that you can see how well you did and you can check your financial position at the end of the period. Again, it's really a very smooth process. All you have to do first is sign up and set up. Then the fun starts.
Chapter 3. Signing up with QuickBooks Online.
Would you like to study QuickBooks Online without having to pay for the software? Well, you should know that there is a way that you could sign up for QuickBooks Online and it will be completely free. You see, there is a link in the description field of this video. So if you're looking at this video, look right below the video as it runs, and you can click in the description field, which is the text right below the video. And if you click the Show More button right at the end of the text, the rest of the description field will open up and it will reveal the link where you can sign up for free for QuickBooks Online 30-day free trial. Once you click on the link, all you have to do is choose a password and put in your email address, and you will be given prompts to sign up. Now, they're very easy, and all you have to do is follow the simple prompts, and you will be able to sign up for the Plus version of QuickBooks Online for free. But you should know that the reason the sign up is a separate video and that I did not include it in this video for a reason. And that's because the steps of the sign up and the prompts that they give you will change slightly over time. But they never change so much that you cannot know what to do when they ask for some information as part of the sign up. Just try to answer the setup questions in the way that speeds things along the best. So just remember some simple things when you go to sign up so that even if there's something different on the screen that's a little different in the video, you will still know what to click on when you sign up. So just remember, you're just getting started, and that will speed things along when you answer the questions in QuickBooks Online. Remember to tell QuickBooks Online that you're a sole proprietor and that you don't have any partners, and that your company provides a service, so there's no need to count and manage quantities of inventory. Also, remember, you're the owner, okay, so that you have all authority over the company, and make sure you make the right choices as you click for the answers. Now, for everything else, you can pretty much just find the Skip Now button. And every time you're actually given an option to skip now, always click the Skip Now button to pass the section that you're in so that you can speed things along and finish signing up. You see, if you don't click the Skip for Now button, you might waste time activating irrelevant features that will clutter things up, and make the sign up take longer than it needs to. Remember, we're speeding things along to do the absolute minimum bookkeeping to be able to satisfy the bookkeeping requirements for taxes or anything else you need. So, once you finish answering the questions, you will get the screen that looks similar to this, and you'll be ready to get started. Just remember, the link to sign up is in the video description below. And you should utilize the video description below. When you're looking at the video and you click in the description field, at the end of the text where it says show more, you'll get more than just the link to the sign up video. You'll get the full table of contents where you can click on the time index of any particular chapter, and the video will jump right to that chapter if you want to watch things in a different order if it's the second or third time that you're watching the video. That will make learning easy and fun. So I hope you have an easy time signing up, and I hope you'll come right back to this video where we can jump right into the learning of QuickBooks Online.
Chapter 4. Navigating QuickBooks Online.
So what exactly are you looking at when you first join up with QuickBooks Online? Well, some people will be lucky enough to have QuickBooks Online set them up in something called Business View, but other people will be randomly selected when they sign up and be given Accountant View. Now, those are the only two possible views that you could see when you first sign up with the QuickBooks Online Plus version. You see, if you're looking at Accountant View, the left panel will look like this. But if you were unlucky enough to be assigned Business View when you signed up, it will look like the panel on the left. Now, with Accountant View, all the menu choices are written out clearly. But if you were unlucky enough to get Business View, you have to click to open a submenu in order to get the rest of the choices. And that's why in this course, we will be looking at the interface in Accountant's View. And don't worry, I'm going to show you how to switch between them in a moment, and it's very easy. But no matter what you're looking at in QuickBooks Online, there will be always three things that will be the same. First, you will always have a cogwheel in the top right corner of your interface, and the cogwheel will always open a set of menu choices. And these menu choices are all about setting up and maintaining the usage of your QuickBooks Online account. So that's the category of choices when you click the cogwheel in the top right. However, if you click the plus sign in the top left, the menu that opens up there is a set of submenus that allow you to record and enter the day-to-day transactions that you have when you're running your business. Pretty simple so far. However, the third place that you need to know to click on is the left panel. And the left panel has mostly repeats of the same windows that you can open from either the cogwheel on the right or the plus sign on the left. But there is one thing that you have to click in the left panel for, and that's to find the QuickBooks Online reports. In fact, the left panel is the only place where you can click to get the QuickBooks Online reports. And the reports are the most important windows because they are the windows that not only show you the results, but they actually allow you to easily find and fix any of the transactions that you recorded. And that's the way we're going to do it in this course. You see, once you get into Business View, all the shortcuts in the dashboard that you're looking at that are next to the control panel, they're all the same shortcuts to the same windows that you can open up from either the cogwheel or the plus sign in the left. But these shortcuts that are here on the dashboard change all the time, whereas the menu choices from the cogwheel and the plus sign tend to stay the same. So if you have the plus version, you can just click on the cogwheel here and you will see this menu open up. And when you look at the nature of the choices, you will see that this is about setup and maintenance. However, if you click in the top left, you can see clearly that the menu choices presented here are all about the different types of transactions that different companies would make. And you'll notice the panel on the left reflects the accountant's view where everything is written out clearly. That's why I recommend you keep your settings in the accountant's view so that you can easily get to the reports menu, which is literally the most important menu choice in all of QuickBooks. But in order to change views from business view to accountant view, you need to know a little bit about the QuickBooks Online account settings. You see, the settings in QuickBooks Online are the defaults, the options, the preferences. Basically, the settings are the automatic behavior of QuickBooks Online unless you specifically state differently. And we will adjust the very first setting, the most important setting that you need to know at the beginning. We're going to change from business view to accountant's view just by clicking to open up the menu from the cogwheel and then look in the bottom right where it says switch to accountant's view or business view, and then you will see the interface change. Here, watch. If I click on the cogwheel, it says switch to business view, so I give it a click and I wait a moment, and you can see that we have this very abbreviated and confusing main menu with icons and submenus and so on. But if you click in the cogwheel and you go back to switch to accountant view, then you can see a nice clear left panel where the submenu choices are much easier and it reflects much more like the old interface in QuickBooks Online. But you still need to learn more about the accountant setting, because all the other settings that you would need to change in QuickBooks Online are in the account settings window. And the account settings window you open from the cogwheel, and one of the menu choices is account and settings. Now, in the case of a simple small company, the only setting that you actually need to change is the name and address of the company. And whatever you put there will show on the reports and the documents that you print from QuickBooks Online. And you can always go back and change the name and address right there in the same area. So here's the example company address. It's the Holden Wedding Video Company, 1700 Prospect Avenue, East Meadow, New York, 11554, just as an example, okay? So watch. You click the cogwheel, and then you click Account Settings. And if you had a complicated company, you would have to go through each of these choices and set the settings for the difficult things that complex companies need. But in our case, we have a simple company. So just click the company section of settings, and in order to change the name and address, you have to click the pencil icon to open up that section. Then simply click in the proper field and type in the name that you need. Now, of course, in real life, you would put the EIN number and the Social Security number and so on, and then you would simply click Save. And that's what would print. The contact info and company address, specifically the company address, is what will change and what will actually print on most of the reports and documents. So let's click the company address and change it to, in this example, 1700 Prospect Avenue, East Meadow, New York, 11554. If it doesn't come up automatically, it should give you the ability to type it in. Then when you click Save, You can rest assured that all of your financial reports and all of your transaction documents will print with the name you put up here and print with the address you put in this section of account settings. And if you get more advanced with QuickBooks, you can see that there are other areas of settings that you will use in order to run your business if it's one of the more complicated business, not the kind we're doing here. When you finish in the settings window, make sure it's saved by going to the bottom right and click Done. And now you know how to change the name and address of the company, or now you know where to go if there's any other setting you need to change.
Chapter 5. Input list of customers and vendors.
The most important set of names that you will be dealing with, obviously, will be your list of customers. And it will benefit you to have their name, address, and contact information in QuickBooks Online for you to easily access in the customer section. But in order to service these customers, you will have to pay other professionals to provide service to you so you're able to do for the customer what you need. It would therefore also be helpful for you to put on the names list the list of vendors whom you deal with. Now, it's very simple to input the customers on the customer list. And 2 customers are plenty for our example if this is in fact a crash course. So how do we do it? Well, all of the customer data is under the left panel choice called Sales. And when you click on the Sales in the left panel, a menu opens up where you can see all of the different choices that relate to sales. All you have to do is click on the Customer tab and you'll get to the section of customer data. So let's go ahead and put in the customers that we have here. We go over to QuickBooks Online and we click Sales and then go down to Customers. Now, if it's the very first time that you're coming to this window, you make a choice of importing or adding. And in this crash course, we're adding because importing is another course entirely. So we click Add Customer, and notice we get the new customer window where we can input all the fields of data that we need. And now we see the fields of data that we need to fill out, so we can always call it back to contact the customer or put the customer on a transaction. So all we have to do is copy it over. And you can pause the video in this position if you wish to copy it yourself at your own pace. And you may notice that after you type in the first and last name, it should automatically display in the customer display name. And if it's an individual, you should also copy that to the company name field. But if the company name is different, of course, you would put the actual company name. Now, of course, here we have the phone number. And you can pause the video and type it in at your own pace. And if you had any other of these fields of data, of course, you would type them in. But one of the most interesting fields of data is something that's extremely helpful to you. It's the Notes feature. And each customer will have a separate area of data where you can write notes all about that specific customer. You see, the Notes feature allows you to add any other data that you might need that's unique for that specific customer. For example, if Alan were allergic to peanuts, you'd want to remember that so that you don't eat any planters while you're sitting there negotiating with him. So what you would do is you would type that into the Notes field. In fact, you don't even have to spell things correctly because it has its own spell check. Right-click and it will fix it. Then all you have to do is click Save, and you'll notice you have his information saved. And if you wish to see what it looks like on the list of customers, You can just click Customers up here, and you can see now we only have one customer on the list. Click New Customer, and now we'll put in Betty Boop's information. So we'll come back here, and again, you can pause the video to type it in at your own pace. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And whatever else the data happens to be, 9, 6, 7, 8. And now, if you don't have any notes to record for Betty for anything special, just click Save. And you see Betty has been recorded. And when we click the main customer list, we can see that this is what your customer list looks like. And you can always click on the name to call up their account, and then click Edit to go back to the fields to change and save anything you need. Putting in vendors is the exact same thing as putting in customers. All of your vendor data is under the area of expenses in the left panel. And when you click on it, you get a submenu, just like you did with the sales section. And if you click on the vendor tab, you'll get the vendor data, and managing the vendor data is 100% the same as managing the customer data. Here, watch. We click Expenses and Vendors. Now, because this is a crash course, it should be sufficient just to put their name on the vendor list. You could always go back and add the address and contact information for any vendor that you'd like to have that information for, including the notes. But just to speed things along, it might be convenient, even in your own situation, just to put the name on the vendor list. So we just put the first one here, Staples, and of course, let it display as the company name. Then you can click Save. Now you see Staples is on the list. Click New Vendor, and now we'll put the next one, Office Max. And of course we save, and then Office Max is on the list of vendors with Staples, and you could always click for the name and reopen it, and then once it's in front of you, click Edit so that you can add back anything that you choose later on. Let's just put in the rest. Let's go ahead and click, we'll click back to the list of vendors by clicking here. And now we'll click New Vendor and see who's next. UPS. That's it. Save. New Vendor. Who's next? FedEx. That's it. Save. Go to the next one. Con Edison. Con Edison, Consolidated Edison, is the electric company out here in New York City. And the last one will be Rex Repair Shop. And we click Save. Now the list of vendors and list of customers are finished, and you have all the names on the list to be able to record transactions and get the contact information for anyone you do business with.
Chapter 6. Setting up reports.
You see, we have to set aside the reports that we use in this crash course so that we can quickly access only the reports we need without having to sift through hundreds of other reports that QuickBooks Online makes available. All we have to do is find them, open them, and save them. And then once we save them, they will be set aside in a place that's easy to find. So first, we'll set up the name reports. The reports that list every transaction for each customer and every transaction for each vendor. So how would we do that? We would click Reports, and notice the Reports tab in the left panel has 3 sections:
Standard, Custom, and Management. The Standard section is the place where QuickBooks Online makes available all 150 or 200 reports that can be applied to any type of business. But the Custom section is the place that we save it to. This way, we have only the few reports that we need, and they look exactly the way we need them to look, and we won't have to sift through hundreds of other reports every time we need to open one of our documents. So again, only the left panel has the Reports menu, and let's click Standard and find the Transaction List by Customer. Go down to where it says Sales and Customers, and towards the bottom is a report that's called Transaction List by Customer. Now we click on it, and we notice that by default, it's only showing the transactions from whatever the beginning of the current month is until today. But we don't want that. We want this report to show the results of all transactions regardless of date. So we click the pull down and we click All Dates, and then we click Run Report. And you'll notice when we click Run Report, instead of showing that this is from the beginning of the month until today, it'll show all dates. So remember, you have to click Run Report before you can save it. And you should know that once you open and save the report, they will be set aside for your convenience. So let's take a look. So now that we ran the report and made the change, we click Save Customization and then click Save. And we can check it's set aside in the special place that makes it easy for us to find reports. If we click Reports and then we click Custom Report, we can see our good friend Transaction List by Customer is right here. And we can double click and open it up, and we notice that QuickBooks remembered that our custom report remembers that we like to see the results of all transactions regardless of date. Let's do that for the vendors as well. Reports. We pull it out from the Standard section, scroll all the way down to the section in the reports that say Expenses and Vendors, and towards the bottom will be Transaction List by Vendor. And we double click, and again notice that the pull down only applies to the current date. But in our course, we need it to apply to all transactions regardless of date. And the change will not take effect unless we click Run Report. Now the change took effect, so we click Save, Save again, and now that we click Save, we can click Reports, Custom Report, and we have both reports here waiting for us set aside so we can find it quickly and easily, and the reports remember the way we need them to look. So what did we learn? We learned that any change we make to the report counts as customization or customizing. And we also learned you must click Run Report to be able to see the change. Then, of course, once you click Save Customization, QuickBooks will not only set it aside, but it will remember the change that you made. So now, let's set up our financial statements, the trial balance that we'll use every day in this course, and the other two financial statements that come from the trial balance if we ever want to present our results. Well, it's very simple. Reports. We go to the Standard section, scroll down to all the way down to the place that says For My Accountant. And the most important report that we will use every day to check our results is the trial balance. We double click, and again, we don't want the trial balance this month to date. We have to click the pull down and click All Dates. Don't forget to click Run Report and then Save Customization. In fact, when you customize, you can actually slightly change the name. My Trial Balance. You see now when you click Save and you then click Reports and custom report, instead of saying trial balance, it will say my trial balance. This way, when you double click, you'll know that my trial balance is the one that I changed the date for or made any other customization that you'll learn about later. So let's put on the other two financial statements, reports, standard, scroll all the way down to where it says for my accountant, and look, we have the balance sheet. Click on it, and then we click the pull down, all dates, run report, see, save customization, and save. And the last one, reports, in standard, scroll all the way down to the for my accountant, profit and loss, which some people call the income statement, pull down, all dates, run report, see the change, save customization, and save. Now, anytime we need to find any transaction we're looking for, we can click reports, custom reports, and we can click to open any of these. In fact, we could even edit and make more changes or even change the name. But just by using these 5 simple reports, we will always know our financial condition, and we will always be able to find and fix any transaction we record.
Chapter 7. The Chart of Accounts.
Now you may well ask, what is the chart of accounts? Well, in the days before the computer, the chart of accounts was called the general ledger. And basically it was a book where each page in the book listed and recorded a separate category of the financial transactions of the company. Now that we have the computer, it's the same exact idea, but each page in the book is basically a little separate file or section within the chart of accounts. It's supposed to replicate the functionality of having a book where each page would record a different category of transactions. For example, the first page might be called video income, where you would record every deposit you made where you earned income specifically for that one service video. This way you could compare it to the other page that recorded your income from another service, so you would be able to tell where your money is coming in from. Some of the other pages in the general ledger and chart of accounts would also be expense categories that you would write down. For example, delivery expense might be the page that you write down every time you pay for a company delivery. And whether you pay FedEx or UPS, it wouldn't matter. If that's the service you paid for, then that would be the page that you would write down that transaction. Now, of course, you will need an account in the chart of accounts for each separate expense you have, so you can record and find the total of that expense. You would need a separate account in the chart of accounts for each of the different ways that you earn income, so that you could record them on separate pages and track them separately. And because the bank and credit card companies are also keeping records of your account, you should also have a separate page or a separate account in the chart of accounts for each bank type of account you have and each credit card you have. This way, you can record those transactions on separate files in separate areas so that you could find the total and always know the running balance. Now, in the days before the computer, it didn't look like this. Basically, the general ledger was a book like you saw a moment ago, where each page in the book looked like a spreadsheet with columns that had different widths. And whenever you had a transaction that related to that specific category, you would record each piece of data regarding that transaction across the row. So each row represented a transaction, and each column represented a section of data for each transaction. Recording it logically in this way made it very clear what transactions we had. And although it was helpful to look at the pages of the listed transactions, the most important results came from summarizing and totaling the numbers. Once we got the total of every account in the chart of accounts, we could then use those totals for valuable insights. We would then organize those totals onto the financial statements that we've been speaking about so that we can have a clear picture of what's going on in the business. For example, the results of all the income and expenses would be listed on a report called the profit and loss. And the profit and loss would clearly show how well your company did during a specific period of time. And the other numbers that did not go on the profit and loss went on another report, a different report called the balance sheet. And the balance sheet's purpose is to show you what you have compared to what you owe. And of course, this is a very abbreviated balance sheet, but you can see if you compare your bank account's balance to your credit card balances, you'll have a good sense of the financial position of the company. And that's the reason we use the chart of accounts. And all of this accounting ultimately results in taking the ending balance of each account and listing it on our good friend, the trial balance. Once the trial balance confirms that all the numbers are correct, then we would take some of those numbers and put them on a balance sheet and put the rest of the trial balance numbers on the profit and loss. And it's the two financial statements that experts in business and financial people would look at to judge how well your business is doing and what position your company is in. So that's how we would use the general ledger in a common sense way. Of course, the financial statements would be presented to people who would need to know the financial position and how well the company is doing. In large companies, it's usually the upper management or the stockholders, but no matter what type of company you have, you will ultimately have to report the ending balances in your general ledger to the IRS. So that's how it works when you're using a book for the general ledger, and that's exactly how it works in the computer. Now, inputting the chart of accounts into QuickBooks Online is as simple as putting in a list of data. And what we're looking at here is what we want the chart of accounts to look like when we finish. And you may notice there are 3 areas of data that we have to input when we put in the list of accounts that we need for our specific company. So let's quickly talk about them. You have to put in the name. You have to tell QuickBooks Online which account type it is, and you also, in QuickBooks Online, have to tell QuickBooks what detail type the account is. Now, what do all 3 pieces of data really mean? Well, name can be anything you want. You can type it in, but in our course, we're going to put all capitals. This way, we can clearly distinguish between the accounts that we created and the accounts that QuickBooks Online created for us. And exactly what you type in the name field when you create the account is what's going to show up on the reports. Now, when choosing account type determines what transactions you can put into the account. For example, if it's a bank type of account, you can record bank deposits. But if it's an expense type of an account, QuickBooks Online will not give you the ability to record your bank deposits into an expense type of account. And the account type also determines what position that account will appear on your financial statements. Now, the third piece of data is relatively unique to QuickBooks Online. You also have to choose a detail type. And the detail type is also called tax mapping. And it determines where on the company tax forms will the balance of that specific account show up. Now remember, it usually does not affect your day-to-day QuickBooks usage. It really is the truth that in this course, if you accidentally put the wrong detail type, in most cases, it will not affect you. It's simply for the accountant. If the accountant who's doing the taxes wants to access the QuickBooks Online account, all they would have to do is log in as the accountant user, and they'd be able to import all the accounts onto the tax forms if they were mapped correctly. So don't worry too much about detail type and tax mapping, because we're the bookkeeper. Our job is to just make sure the numbers are right, regardless of where they go on the tax forms. Now, when we go to record the accounts, you will see that there are different choices you have to make in order to create these accounts. First, you have to choose an initial general category from the 6 choices up here. But when you go to do that, it will be clear what category you should choose based on the name of the account. And you're going to do it along with me so you don't have to worry. Now, once you choose the general category, it's a simple choice to choose the account type. Usually the account type that we're going to use in the simple course should be the same name as the general category. And they're all right there on the pull-down list. Then once you chose the account type, you choose the detail type. And again, the detail type might not affect us in this course, but if your accountant is using the convenience of importing from QuickBooks Online, it might help your accountant do the tax forms more quickly if you map it out right and make the correct detail type choice. Please note, QuickBooks Online already added to your chart of accounts a huge number of accounts for you to use. The ones that we use will be in capital, so it'll be easier for our eyes to see it when we go to make transactions. And don't worry that there are so many other accounts on the list. You will see later how to remove them if you have time on your own and you'd like to make it clear. So for now, let's take a look at this list and one by one put in each of these accounts. We scroll down to where it says Accounting and then click Chart of Accounts. If it's your first time here, you have to click on the green button. Now you may notice that there's a huge number of accounts that's already on the list of accounts. And QuickBooks Online thinks that it's trying to help you by giving you all these accounts to choose from when you do your work. But you see, I find it much easier to put in the accounts, the specific accounts that we need when we're first learning. So let's go ahead and click New. And notice you have the picture we saw a moment ago. Now, when we look at our list of accounts, the first one up here is a bank type of account. And normally the first choice you make, we're going to make it simple by clicking here and putting whatever name is similar to the general category. Then the detail type in this example was checking, and the name that we're going to put is Chase Bank number 1234. So we click in the account name field and we type in, and if you need a moment to type, you can pause the video just to type it in so we can do it together. And when you click Save, you will notice if you scroll down a bit or sort by name, or sort by type, eventually you will find on the list the account that we just saved. It's a little difficult to find because there's so many others, but our eyes can find it more easily because we saved it in capital letters. So let's do the next one. Cash on hand, a bank cash on hand type of account. So we come back here, New. It's a bank type of account, and we'll explain why later. So again, we want to click Bank Accounts. The tax form section would be cash on hand, because that's the detail type, and that's also the name we type in. And again, you don't have to type it as quickly as I do, but when you finish, click Save, and then you'll notice it's saved on the list of accounts in the chart of accounts. Let's do company credit card, Amex number 5678. And these are the types. Well, it's very easy. New, credit card, credit card. Credit card is the easiest. And then you type in and then you simply save it, and you can rest assured when you go down to the credit card section, you'll be able to find the account that you just saved. Okay? Now, I'll do 2 more with you, and you'll see if you can do the rest yourself by making the appropriate choices. What about Holden's Capital Investment? So we click up here, New. That would be equity. And then the type would be equity. And then the tax form section, well, what does it say on the list? It says owner's equity. So we click here, choose owner's equity, and we type in the name. And after we type it in, we can click Save. And rest assured, if you scroll down to the equity section, you'll see the one that you made, and you could even make the column a little wider if you want to see. Oh, sorry about that. If you want to see it, but there we go. So see if you can, without the teacher, pause the video and put in the remaining 7 accounts yourself. It won't look like this when it's finished, but I'll show you a way that you can get it to look like this and make it easy. Now keep in mind, when you finish, your chart of accounts will not look like this. That's because these accounts will be spread out over all the other accounts that QuickBooks Online comes with. But if you scroll down slowly, then you will find little by little that you have all of the accounts. And you could resort the list by name, by clicking name, type, by clicking type. You could even sort it by detail type. And that might help you find what you're looking for. If you made a mistake, you can just click edit, and it's in the same place as make inactive. So now watch. For example, if I wanted to change the name of this account or remove it, I would go all the way to the right and I would click the pull down. Now, if I click edit, I have the ability to change the type, the account type, or even type in a different name. And if I save the change, you can see right away the change affects the chart of accounts and I made the edit. But if I wanted to remove it completely, I would click the same pull down arrow and click Make Inactive. And as long as the account has not recorded a transaction in it, I'll get a warning, I'll click Yes, and it will be gone. And if you want, you can remove all the other accounts, or at least most of the other accounts that are getting in our way that we are not using. But you'll have to do that after the video. And you don't have to do it. You only have to do it if you want a little bit of an easier time finding the accounts you're looking for when we work on later videos.
Chapter 8. Recording Deposits.
The bank deposit slip window is as simple as the deposit slip you fill out at the moment you actually make the deposit. And it has a space and a field for each of the pieces of information you would need. It has a field for what, who, when, how much, and why. And all you have to do is answer those questions by clicking and typing or choosing the data into the respective fields, and the transaction will be recorded. But why are we making a deposit? Well, there can be only 2 reasons why a company is recording a deposit. Either we received income from a service that we provided from a customer, or that deposit money is coming from the owner's personal pocket and the non-business funds that the owner kept separate. And those can be the only 2 reasons. But once we do that, We record the deposit and the results will show immediately in the trial balance. And that's the great thing about using a computer and the great thing about using QuickBooks Online. For example, let's imagine on January 1, we deposited $3,000 from customer Alan for a wedding video that we did today on January 1. Now, once we record this deposit, what do you think the result will be in the trial balance? Well, if we just deposited $3,000 in the bank, Cash and Chase Bank will show up for the first time as $3,000. Then, because the reason we recorded this deposit was we earned video income will also show up on the trial balance for the first time as $3,000. So let's take a look. From the top left, we click New, and we go all the way over to the right, and we click Bank Deposit, and we get our good friend, the Bank Deposit window. Now, we have to make sure that we're pulling it from the correct bank account. So choose Chase Bank 1234. Click right next to the date number to get the date box. And we can go back one, choose January 1, and then just edit the little year to be 2024, regardless of when you're watching this. Now, if we want to record who we received the money from, click directly under the Received From field, and you get the arrow. Click the pull-down arrow, and you'll be able to choose the name of the specific customer who gave us the money. Then, the reason why. Click the pull-down arrow, and we have this huge chart of accounts that I'm going to edit later, don't worry. But you don't have to edit it because you can find easily the account you're looking for just by typing in the first letter of the account name that you're looking for, and QuickBooks will filter it. And then you can click Video Income, and then click in the Amount field and type in the amount. When you finish typing the amount in any field, to save the field without saving the whole window, go to the left of your keyboard and push the Tab key. And the Tab key will move the cursor away and save the data so that QuickBooks knows before you save this deposit, you're depositing $3,000. Now when we click Save and New, or actually you could click here and click Save and Close, and it would close the window. Close the window regardless, yes, because there was no data. Now let's open the trial balance and see if the results are exactly as what we expected. We click Reports, and then we open the trial balance, and you can see Cash and Chase Bank showed up for $3,000, and Video Income also showed up for $3,000. Pretty clear. Now, example 2. Let's imagine on January 2nd, we deposited $1,500 from customer Betty for an editing job that we did on January 2nd. So what will the results be in the trial balance? Well, before we record a $1,500 editing job with money earned, this is the way the trial balance looks. But if we just suddenly earned $1,500 in editing income will show up for the first time as $1,500. And because the bank account has increased by $1,500 from this very same transaction, Chase Bank will increase and the balance there will become $4,500. So we record it the same way. We click New from the top left. We go all the way to the right and click Bank Deposit. We put the date of the event as January 2. So we put the when. Now make sure it's the right bank account you're depositing it to. Make sure it's the right customer you're choosing. When it comes to the amount, you put the amount in the amount field. And the reason why we got this money is reflected in the account we choose. We click the pull down arrow, and there are so many. But the first letter in the account we're choosing is E for editing income. So we can look around here for the E. If we type in ED, it even filters it better. And then editing income, here we are. We have the when, the who, the how much, and where, and why. Now, once we click Save and Close, you can see the results and the trial balance are exactly as what we expected. Chase Bank is now $4,500, and we now have $1,500 of editing income so far. And for our last deposit, let's imagine that on January 3rd, Holden took $1,000 from his personal non-business funds that he normally uses for his family, and he took that money from the account, walked over to the other bank, Chase, and physically deposited that $1,000 into the Chase business bank account. So what will be the result after this third transaction? Well, this is the way it looks now after the second transaction, but if Holden invested $1,000, then Holden's capital investment will show up for the first time as $1,000. And because the bank account now increases by that same $1,000 transaction, we should show $5,500 in the bank account after this transaction. So we'll do it the same way. New, bank deposit. We put when. We make sure it's the right bank account it's going to. We put who it's coming from. We could actually leave this blank if it comes from the owner, or you could put the owner's name. But we're going to put in, type in the first three letters, so we filter the accounts, and the amount is $1,000. Now when we click Save and Close, you can see the results are exactly as what we expected. We now have a capital investment of $1,000, and the amount in the bank account is exactly as what we expected, $5,500. Now at this point, some of you might be asking, what if I made a mistake and I put the wrong amount or put something wrong with the transaction? No problem. Just reopen the transaction and change it. Okay, so before we do something fun, watch, I'm going to show you. If you wanted to change any of these transactions from the trial balance, all you would have to do is hover over the total balance of the account that the transaction was recorded into, any one of these, and double click. And when you double click, you will get a list of every transaction that was recorded into that account. You can just double click on any one of the list in the detail here, and if you double click along the row of any one of these transactions, you will go right back to the very same window that you actually recorded the transaction in. And once you're in that window, you can change anything you want. And once you save the change, the results will change immediately in the trial balance. Okay, so let's do something fun. Let's make the January 2nd transaction become $1 million. Let's pretend that's the mistake and see what happens. So we come here and, well, let's go back to reports, trial balance. So if you notice something funny about a total balance, double click to get the detail. Then go up and down, scroll left and right till you find the transaction you're looking for, and anywhere on the row, double click. Now, instead of $1,500, tab to save the field. Now it's $1 million. Now look what happens when I click Save and Close. See, when I go to the right, the $1 million is reflected here and it screws up the balance. So if I click Reports, Trial Balance, I can see I now have $1 million in editing income and $1,004,000 in the Chase Bank. And we know that's not right, but the point is that's how you would change something. So let's fix it. And this is the way you would fix it. You notice the total is wrong, so you double click, and then you go one by one until you find from the list which one is the wrong one. Clearly, this one is the wrong one. So anywhere in the row, double-click, and then all you have to do is fix what was mistaken, no matter what field of data it is. Then click Save and Close, and you can see it's fixed in the account. And if you go back to the trial balance, the results are correct again. And one last point, these very same transactions you can find if you open the list from the customer. Transaction list by customer. Right now there's only one transaction for Alan, but if there were more, they'd be all listed in the Alan section. There's only one transaction for Betty, but if there were more, they'd be listed in the Betty section. And we could double-click the transaction from this report as well and change and fix anything we want.
Chapter 9. Checks and Expenses.
Why would we write a check or record an expense? Well, there can be only one of two reasons. Either we're making a normal business payment for a normal business expense, or the owner is taking money out of the company for non-business personal reasons. Now, the expense window and the checks window are really the same thing. And when you record something in either of them, they have the exact same result. They both have almost the same areas of data and data entry fields that you would use to record things in. So here's the check window. And when you record a check, there's a place for what, who, when, how much, and why, just like you would record if you were writing it down in a checkbook and keeping track of it by hand. Now notice the expense window is almost exactly the same thing. The only real difference is that instead of the field saying check number, it says reference number. And it's basically just the transaction number or the number that refers to that specific transaction the way a check number would. And you would use the expense window for any reduction in the bank account that's not a check. Regardless of which of the two windows you record a transaction into, the results will show up immediately in the trial balance, and the results will be exactly the same regardless of which of the two windows you recorded the transaction in. For example, let's imagine on January 4th, we paid UPS $500 for a delivery paid with check number 661. Now, this is what the trial balance looks like after our previous transaction. So what will be the result in the trial balance now at the moment we record and save this check? Well, cash will have to go down by $500 because we just wrote a check from Chase Bank. And because we wrote the check for delivery, delivery expense will show up for the first time in the trial balance as $500. Let's take a look at how to record it. We click New and go to the second column where it says Vendors and go down and click Check. And we get our good friend, the check window. Now we move the date back to what it's supposed to be. In this case, we're imagining it's January 4th of 2024. And who are we paying? And why are we paying UPS? We click down here and we're paying UPS for delivery expense. Just type the first two letters and the filtered account should show up somewhere on the short list and you can see it clearly and click on it. And the amount we're paying. Now, don't forget to put in the check number, and you can study about checks later. Now that we have all the information, we click Save and Close. And now let's check the trial balance. We click Reports. We go to Custom Reports, and we click My Trial Balance. And we can see that the balance of the bank account has been reduced to $5,000 even, and delivery expense shows up for the first time as $500. And now we'll do our third example. Let's imagine on January 6, Holden made an ATM withdrawal from the Chase business bank account for personal, non-business reasons. It was $200, and here's the reference number. Well, as we mentioned before, it's not a check, so we would record this in the expense window. Now, this is the way the trial balance looks before we record a withdrawal specifically for non-business reasons. So, at the moment we record this expense, Holden's withdrawals will show up for the first time in the amount that he took out of the company, not just out of the bank account, out of the business. That's $200. And because he took it from the Chase bank account, the Chase bank account will go down by $200, and the result will be $4,000. Let's take a look. We come here and we click New, and because it's a reduction of the bank account, that's not a check, we click Expense. We first make sure that we're recording the expense and the ATM withdrawal from the proper bank account. We set the proper date for this transaction, and we can skip the payee if it's the owner, or you could put the owner on the list. Now, the reason we're taking this money is non-business, so we type in HOL, click Holden's withdrawals, and then all we have to do is put the amount. Remember, if it's not a check, there should be some transaction number or reference number, in this case 9988776. It's usually a weird number. And at the moment we click Save and Close, the results in the trial balance are exactly as what we expected. Holden's withdrawals showed up for the first time as $200, and the cash in Chase bank account decreased to $4,000. Now, this is very good, but you should know what to do if you make a mistake. If you make a mistake, it's not a problem. As we mentioned in the previous lecture, just reopen the transaction and change it. So let's do something fun. Let's make January 6 become 4,200 instead of just 200. Well, we can do that pretty easy. We could double-click either Holden's withdrawals and then see the one transaction that's listed there. Let's go back. Or we could double-click Chase Bank and find the transaction that way. And we could go down to January 6, and by double-clicking anywhere across the row, so you can scroll across to see the whole row, but if you double-click anywhere in the row of the January 6 transaction, you can come back to the window and do anything you want with it and make any change that you want. So now I changed it to 4,200 by clicking in the field, changing the number, and pushing Tab. When I click Save and Close, and I go back to Reports, Trial Balance, the bank account is cleaned out, and Holden ran away with the money. Or at least it looks like he ran away with the money. But it's not a problem because we can fix it easily. You see, all we have to do is double-click Holden's withdrawals, find the only transaction that's there, and double-click to open it up, and we can change it right back. Push Tab to save the field. We can change any of the data fields, including which account category, which bank account, date, reference number, anything. Click Save and Close, and now when we click Reports, Trial Balance, you can see the numbers have fixed themselves. Now, there is one more thing you should know before we jump into our first little exercise. Every once in a while, There's something that you can't fix and you have to delete. And if you delete it, it's like you never entered it in the first place, which means you might have to delete and re-enter. So let's delete the charge for supplies for Office Max and see what the result is before we put it back. So if we go to supplies expense, we could find the charge here or listed in the bank account. If we go here, it's only one transaction. If we come here to the bank account and double click, we can find the Office Max. You could see the name. You could find it by date when you look up and down the rows and the columns, and then you can come across. So the Office Max one for $800, let's delete it, and then we'll re-enter it. We double click. Now, how do you delete a transaction? Down here, there's a button that says More, and it's the More button that allows you to delete the transaction that's in front of you. So we click More, and then we click Delete. Are you sure? Yes. See, this way you don't screw up and delete something by accident. Now you can see that's gone. If we go back to our good friend, the trial balance, there is no supplies expense. There are no supplies expense. So it's almost like it never existed. In fact, if we click Reports and we look at the transaction list by vendor, you can see that it doesn't really show a lot of vendors. It just really shows UPS because the Office Max one was deleted and the withdrawal from Holden, we didn't put a name. But let's be nice and put back the transaction that we just deleted. It was January 5th, an expense to Office Max for supplies for $800. Remember, new, expense, put the proper date, always double check that you're dealing with the right bank account. It was click for the pull down arrow, and then type SU for supplies expense. It'll filter it nicely. And the amount was $800. And again, the reference number is very important, 98765. Don't forget to put Office Max as the vendor and then click Save and Close. We have replaced the transaction that we deleted. So when we click Reports, Trial Balance, you can see supplies expenses back and the Chase bank account is back to its correct balance.
Chapter 10. Simple Practice Exercise Set.
This is what the trial balance should look like before you start the practice set. If you have any numbers that are different, you need to use what we learned in the course to find and fix your mistakes and enter things properly so that we're both starting with the same sets of numbers. And this is what the customer and vendor transaction list should look like before you start the exercise. Again, make sure the details are the same, and if they're not, fix them exactly the way that we learned. Now here are the transactions that you're going to record during this exercise. Record them slowly. You might have to pause this video so that you can look back and read the transactions and enter them at your convenience. Make sure you enter them exactly the way that we learned in the course. If you forgot how to enter a particular transaction, then I suggest you go back to a particular video lecture, the one that shows how to record the transaction you forgot, watch how it's done, and then come back here and enter it. There weren't that many, so it shouldn't be too bad to record all of these transactions properly. When you finish, your trial balance should look exactly like this. If it does, then congratulations. If it does not, then you have to apply the techniques that we learned in the 2 prior videos to find and fix your mistakes and make sure your results end up the same as mine. And here's what the transaction list by customer should look like with all the details after you record everything in this exercise set. And this is what the transaction list by vendor should look like. Make sure all the numbers and all the details are the same. And if not, reopen the transactions in the way that we learned, fix what's different, and then save it. I'm absolutely sure when you finish this exercise, you will be at a higher level of QuickBooks Online. Good luck, and I'll see you in the next video.
Chapter 11. Managing Cash Transactions.
There are always some cash transactions in any company, and there's nothing wrong with cash transactions. As long as you keep receipts and proper records, it's appropriate to make cash transactions for any company. There could be many reasons why it's more convenient to pay cash for things, even for a large company. And the record keeping for your cash on hand is exactly the same as it would be as if the cash were physically in the bank account. It doesn't matter where the cash is, the record keeping that we do in QuickBooks will be the same. You see, with a bank account, the bank account's balance will increase when we deposit to the bank account, meaning we physically put money in. And the bank account's balance will decrease when we pay from the bank account because the money's coming out. And it's the exact same thing with the company cash. No matter where you keep the company cash, whether it's a lockbox or the company cash is kept simply in the owner's wallet, you still are depositing to the company cash when you put cash in the place that the company keeps the cash. And it still decreases when you take that cash and you pay from that pile of cash for company expenses. And that's the reason why the record keeping for your cash on hand is exactly the same as the record keeping for your bank account. Now, just like your bank balance will always show as the current balance on the trial balance report, you'll have a separate account in the chart of accounts that shows a separate number that reflects the current balance of the company's physical cash on hand. So in so many ways, it's all the same. You're actually going to use the same window that you use to record depositing money into the bank account as the window that you use to record increasing the pile of cash for the cash on hand. It's the same exact bank deposit window, and again, as soon as you record it, the results will show in the trial balance immediately. The only difference between recording a deposit to the bank account and the deposit to the cash on hand is that when you use the bank deposit window, you must make sure to choose the cash on hand bank type of account instead of the bank account, and then the results will show properly in the trial balance. In fact, when you pay from the cash on hand, you use the very same window that you record paying from the bank account. You record the expense window, and again, the results will show immediately in the trial balance. Of course, the only difference this time is that when you use the expense window to record paying from cash on hand, you have to make sure that you chose the cash on hand account from the pull-down list in the expense window so it records coming from the right place. Now you may well ask, where is the proof of a cash transaction? You see, these are the only transactions that a small company deals with that are not on statements that come from a bank or come from a credit card company or some financial institution. So, therefore, you must have the original paper receipts or deposit slips or any other source document that proves a cash transaction. And you have to keep them in a safe place the same way that you keep the cash in a safe place, because they're the only proof of a cash transaction. And when we do our example transactions, you just have to imagine that we're reading it off these paper receipts rather than reading it off the screen. For example, let's imagine on January 15th, Holden, the owner, took $500 cash from his home, family, non-business cash and put it into the company cash lockbox to establish the cash on hand fund. Now, what will be the results? Well, this is what the trial balance looks like right now before we record taking Holden's personal cash and putting it into the company cash on hand box. But at the moment that he does that, cash on hand should show up for the first time as $500, because that's now the balance of the cash on hand. And because the money came from Holden's personal pocket, Holden's capital investment will increase by $500, and the result will be $4,000. Let's take a look at how to record it. So here's the trial balance with all the numbers from the previous video. To record a cash deposit into the lockbox, we click New. And even though it's not physically in the bank, it behaves the same as the bank account, so we click Bank Deposit. And of course, we have to put the date, January 15th of 2024, in our little story. And we don't have to put received from if it's the owner. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. But most important to understand, the reason why this cash on hand is going up is because Holden invested more from his pocket. So the account reflects the reason. And normally the reference number would be some kind of ATM withdrawal slip if he took it out of his personal bank account, or some kind of cash slip. But we'll skip over that for now. Any document that represents the transaction has a number that usually goes here, and the amount is $500. Very simple. When we click Save and Close, you can see that the results in the trial balance are exactly as what we expected. Cash on hand showed up for the first time as $500, and Holden's capital investment increased to $4,000. So let's do a second example. Let's imagine on January 16th, we paid Office Max $50 for supplies expense, and we paid with cash, and we have this receipt number. So what will be the result in the trial balance after paying $50 more for office supplies? Well, if we paid $50 from cash on hand, then cash on hand decreases by $50 and becomes $450. And because we purchased more supplies, supplies expense increases by $50 and becomes $1,650. Again, from the top left, we click New, and we go over to Expense. We advance the date to the date of the transaction. Make sure you're paying from the correct bank type of account, in this case, cash on hand. We're paying Office Max. And when you get this message in a check or an expense, they're asking if you always want to use the same expense type of account for the same vendor. It might be convenient, but they're also asking you, do you want to put the same amount as last time? I say always click No, because it's never or almost never going to be the same amount each time, even if it's the same expense. QuickBooks Online was trying to help you with that message, but we don't need it. And the reason why we're paying this money is reflected in the account we choose. Type in the first two letters to easily filter to the account you need. And the amount in this case is $50. Now remember, there's usually a cash receipt little piece of paper that has the reference number or the transaction number, and that helps you prove it. So you should copy the number from the little piece of paper and save the little piece of paper with the rest of the company cash. Now when we click Save and Close, you can see the results are exactly as what we expected. Cash on hand decreased by $50 and became $450, and supplies expense increased by $50 and became $1,650. Now, let's do a third example. Let's imagine on January 17th, Holden paid Rex for a $100 cash repair of his equipment, and Rex gave him a handwritten receipt 05/27/1966. So let's record that exactly the way we recorded the other. But what will be the result in the trial balance after paying $100 cash for more repair? Well, cash on hand decreases by $100 because we're taking $100 from the cash on hand, and $350 will be the balance. And if the reason why we're paying is because of repair, we paid $100 more for repair, so repair expense increases to $1,000. We click in the top left, New. We go over to Expense. We advance the date to the date of this transaction. Always double check that you're paying from the correct bank type of account. This time it's Rex Repair. Okay, and the reason why we're paying is we click under the word category to get the pull down arrow, click on the arrow, type RE just to filter the account so that you can easily find repair expense. And the amount was $100. And always put in the number on the slip, and always save a copy and the hard copy of the slip with the cash. 05/27/1968, whatever. Then we click Save and Close, and the results in the trial balance are exactly as what we expected. Cash on hand decreased to $350, and supplies expense increased to $1,650. Now, let's do a fourth example. This one is the most interesting. Pay close attention. January 18th, Holden made, the owner, made an ATM withdrawal of $600, and he withdrew the cash from the company bank account and put that very same cash into the lockbox to be spent as cash for the company. Well, first let's think about what we need the results to be, and then we'll talk about how to record it. We know if the cash on hand is increasing by $600, the result should be $950. And we know if the cash in the bank account is decreasing by $600, the result there should be $5,800. So we know that should be the result. But wait, how to record this particular type of transaction? There are several ways, which I will not waste your time on, several ways that you can get the results to be correct. But the proper way is to use the transfer window, because technically you are transferring the funds from the bank account to the company cash on hand account. So that's where the money's coming from. That's where the money's going to. So we will use the transfer window. And the transfer window is the appropriate place to record a transaction like this. And it's a very simple window. I don't think I need little arrows to show you what to put in the little fields. So remember, this is what the transaction is, and this is what we want the results to be what we showed a moment ago. So let's go ahead and use the transfer window. In the top left, we click New. And of course, we go all the way to the right under the bank deposit. We click transfer. And it's very simple. We advance the date to the date that the transfer happened. And it's the easiest thing to put. We put where the money's coming from. It's coming from the bank account. We put where the money's going to. It's going to the cash on hand account. And the amount that we physically took out, that's reflected. If there's a deposit slip number, you might want to put it in the memo field. Make sure it matches, an ATM withdrawal slip number. I don't know if I gave one, but if there is, you should put it in the memo field or any number on any document associated with the transaction. Save and close, and the results in the trial balance are exactly as what we expected. Cash on hand increased to $950, and cash in bank decreased to $5,800. Now, we know that this is the correct result, but I want to leave you with one final note. Sometimes in a small company where things are done loosely, the cash on hand can simply be a place in the owner's wallet. And you might not really have to set aside a place for cash on hand. Just think about this for a moment. If at any given moment the cash in the owner's wallet is more than the balance of the cash on hand that's indicated in QuickBooks, then all that means is that the extra cash belongs to the owner as an individual, and that's his or her personal cash, and the cash that's reflected in the balance of QuickBooks Online, that part of the cash in his wallet belongs to the company. So that's pretty easy to understand. But what if the cash on hand or the balance in QuickBooks is is greater than the physical amount of cash that you have in the wallet? Well, think about it. If it says we have $950 cash on hand and the wallet only has $500, what would that mean? It means if the cash in the wallet is less, we assume that the owner spent that difference for non-business reasons and simply did not have an opportunity to record that in the expense window. So you can do things loosely and keep the company cash in your wallet. And if the company cash in your wallet is lower than what's indicated in the balance in QuickBooks, it means you made an owner's withdrawals. You don't have to explain what it went for. You just have to remember at the moment you make your financial statements, record an expense and put owner's withdrawals.
Chapter 12. Using Register Windows.
Every bank and credit card account that we use in QuickBooks Online can be opened in a register window. Let's take a look. You see, if you click Accounting, Chart of Accounts, you get the list of accounts that we already put in, and many of these have available the register window. The account we used most in this course was Cash and Bank for Chase, so let's click View Register. As you can see, it lists all the transactions that we recorded in the Chase bank account, and it also has something called a running balance so that you can actually see the balance after each transaction. That means you can see the balance at a specific moment in the past. You probably also noticed that there are 2 lines in the register for every one transaction, because that's supposed to approximate the old register books that people used when they would keep track of their checkbooks in the days before the computer. Now, you can sort this register or any register window by any column heading. So you can sort by date or payee or payment or anything else. Let's take a look. First, let's sort by name. So when we come here, as I mentioned, there are 2 lines for every one transaction. And if you come here, you see that payee and account are in the same column. So you click the arrow next to payee, And now you notice all of Alan's transactions are next to each other. All of Betty's transactions are next to each other, and so on. Let's sort by date. If you click the arrow next to the word date in the column heading, now you see it's oldest to newest as you scroll down. But if you click the arrow, the triangle again, now it's newest to oldest. So you can sort in any way that suits you if you're looking for something specific. Let's sort by amount. That's interesting. If you come to the payment column and in the heading of payment, you click the arrow, now you get all of the transactions that are only payments, only reductions to the account, and they're listed from smallest to largest. And then when they're done, the deposits are listed from largest to smallest. And it's the opposite if you click the deposit arrow. If you click the deposit arrow, now the deposits are listed from smallest to largest, and then the payments are listed from large, well, they're not really in any particular order, but that's what happens when you sort. And one of the greatest things is the filter tool. If you have a lot of transactions in your register, you could filter by date, type, and payee, which means you're filtering by the name of the person, whether it's a customer or vendor. And you can do that right from this little tool that opens up in the top left. For example, let's filter by date. Let's find all the transactions between January 1 and January 15. So, in order to get the filter tool, scroll all the way up and click the little funnel in the top left right above the date column heading. When you do that, you get the filter box. Now, we don't want all dates. We want to click from, and we just want to put it for January 5th, and our little story is 2024. And we want the cutoff to be January 15th of 2024 in our little story. Once we have the date set, we click apply, and now you can see the only transactions that are showing in the register are transactions between January 5th and January 15th. Now, let's see only the checks, because you can filter by transaction type. In order to remove a filter that's already there, you could click Clear Filter or click the little X next to Custom, and it will reset to the normal way the register shows. Now we'll click the filter box again. We want only certain transaction type, in this case, check, and then apply. And now you can see we wrote checks 661, 62, 63, and 64, and probably 65 will be the next one in succession. And again, to remove the filter, click the X or Clear Filter. You can edit any transaction just by clicking on it. For example, let's reopen the January 3rd transaction and add the word hello to the memo field just to see what it looks like when you edit a transaction from the register window. You can more easily find it if you click the date arrow because we're looking for the January 3rd transaction. Here, remember there are 2 lines for every 1 transaction. To edit a transaction in the register window, just click on it. And this is the way the interface looks when you're trying to edit a specific transaction. And you can change any of the data fields, the date, the name, the account, even the money amount. We're going to click in the memo field and just add the word hello and just click save, just for the experience of changing something from the register window. But I had another reason for telling you to do that, because you can search for any number or text that's anywhere in any data field of the transaction, and only the transactions that have exactly that text in one of the fields will come up. So that's what makes it easy to find. if I scroll up and I click the filter icon again to get the filter tool, in the Find window, in the Find field here, just type what you know is in the memo field and click Apply. And the only one that shows up is the one that we put the word hello in the memo field. And doing things like this make it very easy for you to find specific transactions that you're looking for. Don't forget to clear the filter by clicking Clear Filter or the X next to the name of the filter, and then it goes back to the way it's supposed to look. The most convenient thing about these register windows is that you can record all the transactions that relate to the account that you're using directly into that account's register window. And the result will be the same as if you recorded it directly into the deposit window or directly into the expense window, the way we learned in prior videos. For example, let's imagine on January 19th, we deposited $2,200 into the Chase bank account from Alan Arby for a video job that we just did. Well, if this is what the trial balance looks like right now, before we record that transaction, what will happen in the trial balance? Well, we just earned $2,200 more of video income. So video income will increase by that amount and become $6,900. And because the bank account also has $2,200 more in it as a result of the deposit, the bank account will increase by that amount and become $8,000. So let's take a look at how to record this in the register window. So we go to the top, and right under the date column heading is the pull down to choose the transaction you will record. Right now, by default, it says add expense, but if you click the pull down arrow, you get a list of transaction types that you can choose from when recording a new transaction into the register window. So we click deposit in this case, and we know the date is January 19th in our little story, 2024. And we know that the person who paid us was Alan Arby. We know the reason he paid us was video income, so we type VI in order to filter the account and go straight to it, click on it, and we are recording the same exact data fields in the register window that we did in the deposit window. The last thing was the deposit amount, so we click in the field, type the number and push tab just to save the field. Now when we click Save, we can now click Reports, Trial Balance, and you can see the results are exactly as what we expected. Video income went up to $6,900, and cash in Chase Bank went up to $8,000. Please note something very, very important. If you reopen a transaction from a report, it will open in the original deposit or expense window, and it will not reopen the register window. So let me show you what I mean. We just recorded a transaction in cash and bank and video income. So I'm going to double click video income, and you see it looks like any other deposit that was recorded in video income. And when I double click anywhere on the row of the January 19th deposit that we just made, notice the deposit window opens up for this one individual transaction, and you did not go back to the register window. And that was the reason why we needed to learn about bank deposits and expenses before we went to use the register window, so that you understand how to re-edit when you're opening it from a report. Now let's try a second example. Let's imagine on January 20, we paid Staples $150 cash from the cash on hand, and received a paper receipt 8472123. Now, if we paid $150 for more office supplies, what would happen? Well, we have $150 less in cash on hand. So cash on hand will decrease from $950 to $800 because we just gave $150. And if the reason we paid the $150 was for more supplies, supplies expense will increase by $150 and become $1,800. And these are what the numbers should look like after we record this particular cash payment. So what do? We go accounting, chart of accounts, because we're using the register windows. In the same row of the cash on hand account, we click View Register. And now we can see all of the cash on hand transactions. Now this one is an expense. So again, click under the date column heading to get the list of transactions in this triangle. And now we see from the choices, the appropriate transaction for this is expense. We put the date that we paid it from, which was January 20 of 2024 in our little story. Now we paid staples and we paid supplies expense, but what we don't want is the previous amount from a previous transaction. I don't know why they do that. It's supposed to be $150 in this case, and the reference number on the cash slip that we got was 8472123, whatever it is. Now when we click Save and we look at the trial balance, we click Reports, Trial Balance. The results are exactly as what we expected. Cash on hand decreased to $800 and supplies expense increased to $1,800. And don't forget the rule that we learned a moment ago. If we reopen it, the register window will not pop up. The expense window will. If we double click on supplies expense, it looks like any other expense we recorded. And if we double click the one that we recorded in the register, the individual expense window opens up and gives us the ability to change anything we want. And again, that's the reason why we needed to learn the expense window before the register window. Now, our third example is the most interesting. Let's imagine on January 21, Holden made an ATM withdrawal of $400 from the company bank account and put the cash in the company cash lockbox. Well, what will be the result? Well, we know the bank account has $400 fewer dollars, so it will decrease from $8,000 to $7,600. And we know the cash on hand has $400 more dollars, so that will increase from $800 to $1,200. But wait a minute. Which of the two registers should we record this in? The answer is either one. It does not matter. Because this transaction affects both registers, you can record it in one, and QuickBooks Online will automatically record it in the other one for you. So, if you choose to record this transaction in the bank register, you would record it as an expense. And as long as you remember to put the cash on hand as the account in the transaction, the result will be exactly the same as if you do it the other way. You see, the other way you could do it and get the same result would be to enter it as a deposit into the cash on hand register instead of the bank register. And then in that case, the account that you would put as part of the transaction would be the Chase bank account. So you can enter it into the cash register and put the bank account as part of the transaction, or you could enter it into the bank register and put the cash account as the account in the transaction. And the result will be the same. So when you finish, the numbers in your trial balance and all the accounts will be the exact same regardless of which register you record this in. So I'm going to allow you to record this without me showing you, and I'm going to allow all students to choose whichever register they want to record it in. And if you need to rewind the video to see how to record it for that choice, please, I invite you to do so. And see if you can enter it without me and still get the proper results. Chase Bank, 7,600. Cash on hand, 1,200. Good luck. Don't stop until you have exactly these numbers, and I will see you in the next video.
Chapter 13. Managing Credit Card Transactions.
You see, the record keeping for a company credit card is exactly the same method as keeping records of your bank account. They both have plus and minus to the balance every time you have a transaction. But with a bank account, we give our money to the financial institution first, then we pay from the account for the things that we need in business. But with a company credit card, we pay from the account first, and then after that, we give our money to the financial institution to pay off the card. So it's the same transactions, but it's in a different order. And that's the reason why keeping records of a credit card is the same as keeping records of a bank account. In both cases, they both will show up as balances on the trial balance. So just like you have an account in the chart of accounts to show the balance on the trial balance of the bank account, you have another account in the chart of accounts to show the balance of your company credit card. And if you double click, you get a list of every transaction in the company credit card. Most credit card transactions can be recorded in the expense window. It has a field for everything you need. When you charge a company expense, the payment account field should be showing the credit card, the specific credit card account that you're using to charge for the expense. And the category field should be the specific expense or asset that you're charging when you use the company credit card. Then later, when you pay down the card, the payment account should be the bank account that the money is coming from when you pay down the card. And the category account at the bottom should be the credit card that you're actually paying. So you can think of it as coming from the top of the window to the bottom. You're paying from the Chase bank account and you're decreasing the balance of the credit card. For example, let's imagine on January 22nd, we charged $1,700 to Con Edison for the monthly electric bill with this reference number. So what will happen in the trial balance at the moment we record this transaction? Well, since this is our first credit card charge, the American Express card will show up for the first time in the trial balance for the amount of the charge, $1,700. And because the charge was for utilities expense will increase by $1,700 and become $2,800. Let's take a look at how to record it. From the top left, we click New, and we go over to the vendor column and we click Expense. Now we put the date, we usually should put the date first, January 22nd, in our little story of 2024. But the most important field is this. You must make sure that the payment account, when you charge an expense, is the company credit card, the specific one that you're charging. And because we're paying Con Edison, then we click here and we click Con Edison. Now we click directly under the word category and then click the arrow, and we want utilities expense, which we can filter by typing in the first two letters. Then we put the amount, $1,700,
And of course, we copy the slip number from the charge into the reference number field, 7766554. Now we click Save and Close, and the results in the trial balance are exactly as what we expected. The American Express card showed up for the first time as $1,700, and utilities expense increased to $2,800. So now let's do a second example. Let's imagine on January 23rd, we charged $800 to Holden's dentist for dental work, and that's the slip number. Now, what would change in the trial balance at the moment we use the company credit card for Holden's choppers? Well, because we charged more on the credit card will increase by the $800 and become $2,500. Now, this is not an expense of the company. So anytime company money is paid, when it's not an expense of the company, it goes to Holden's withdrawals. So he withdrew from the company for personal reasons $800 more, and that amount increases to $1,300. So just like before, we click New, we come across to Expense, we set the date as January 23rd of 2024 in our little story. You can leave the payee blank if you want to, if it's an investment or withdrawal, but we're paying from the credit card for Holden's personal reasons. So we click right below the word category, then we click on the arrow and type in HO so that it will filter, and you will see this is Holden's withdrawals. Click on it and the amount is $800. You should always try to remember the reference number, whatever that might have been, and then at the moment we click Save and Close, you can see the results are exactly as what we expected. The American Express card now has a balance of $2,500, and Holden's withdrawals has increased to $1,300. And now, example 3. Let's imagine on January 24, Holden paid $700 with an online payment to American Express from the company bank account to decrease the balance of the credit card, and this is the transaction. So what would happen in the trial balance if he pays down the credit card from the bank account by $700? Well, the bank account will decrease by $700 and become $7,300. And the balance of the credit card would also decrease because he's paying it down by $700, and that would become $1,800. So we will record this in the expense window as well. We click New, Expense, and of course we have to put the date, okay, January 24th of 2024 in our little story. But this time we're not paying from the credit card account. This time we're paying from the bank account, and we're paying to the credit card account. Just type in the first 2 letters and then click right on it. And of course, the reference number. And we remember the amount that we're paying was $700. Now we click Save and Close, and you can see the results are exactly as what we expected. Chase Bank decreased to $7,300, and the American Express balance decreased to $1,800. All credit card credits, like returns and refunds, can be recorded in the special window just specifically for credit card returns, refunds, and credits. That's the name of it, Credit Card Credit. and it has all the fields of data that the expense tab has, but this is specific for credits. So let's do an example. Let's imagine on January 25th, Con Edison gave Holden a partial refund for the prior bill that he had paid on January 22nd, which means they're giving back $100 on the Amex credit card that he had paid when he had charged his electric expense or utilities expense with the American Express card. And that's the reference number of the credit that they just gave and lowered his American Express balance. So at the moment Holden records getting a credit back on his American Express by $100 from the company that gave him electricity, what will happen? Well, the American Express balance will decrease by $100 and become $1,700, and the original expense that he charged for his electricity will decrease, which is utilities expense, and he has less of that by $100 because they just gave back some, so his real utilities expense will show $2,700. From the top left, we click New, and in the vendor column, we click Credit Card Credit. Now we advance the date to the 25th, and the payee is Con Edison. And of course, this is the credit card that we're crediting down because the vendor gave us some back. And the category is the expense of the original charge that you're getting the credit for. UT, remember 2 letters, and it will filter for the account that you need. The amount is $100, and I believe that was the number. When we click Save and Close, the results are exactly as what we expected. The American Express went down to $1,700, and the utilities expense decreased to $2,700. Now, it's important to know that credit cards have register windows in QuickBooks Online, just like bank accounts do. And you can do everything we just learned in this video lecture in the register window of the credit card exactly the same way that we learned about registers before, and the results would be exactly the same. So example 5, let's imagine on January 26th, we charged $1,100 on the company American Express card for a delivery from FedEx, and that was the slip number. Now, if this is the way the trial balance looks right now, what will happen when we charge an additional $1,100 on our credit card for a delivery? Well, the credit card balance will increase by $1,100 and become $2,800, and delivery expense will increase by $1,100 and become $2,300. And we can do this in the register exactly the same way that we did it in the other windows. So we click Accounting, Chart of Accounts, and we scroll down to the American Express credit card right here. And right here on the same row as the American Express, we click View Register. Okay, notice everything's in date order, and to enter a new transaction, we click the pull down on the next to the words under the date column heading, the pull down, and this is a credit card expense. We make the date January 26th of 2024, and the payee is FedEx, the company we're charging, and the account DE for delivery expense, and the amount is $1,100. And of course the reference number. Now, at the moment that we click Save, we can go back and click Reports, trial balance, and the numbers are exactly as what we expected. The American Express balance has increased to $2,800 and delivery expense has increased to $2,300.
Chapter 14. Expenses paid by the owner.
Payments from the owner's personal, non-business bank and credit card accounts for company-related expenses are considered capital investments into the company from the owner. And the only account that you can record these types of transactions into is Holden's Capital Investment. When you have transactions where the owner paid from personal account for business reasons, the proper window to record these capital investment transactions would be the register window of the Holden's Capital Investment account. Right now, when you open this account, we only see 3 transactions during the entire course where Holden took personal non-business money and put it into the business accounts with the intention of using it for business. But when Holden pays his personal funds for business reasons or does the transactions here, the equity register should only record the increase column. And that's true for every transaction that would go into Holden's Capital Investment. We only use the increase column because the purpose of this account is to only record investments from the owner into the company. And when we record these types of transactions, the transaction type will be Add Journal Entry. For example, let's imagine on January 27, Holden paid $80 from his personal non-business cash for company supplies purchased from Office Max with receipt number 191919. Well, this is the way the trial balance looks before we record this transaction. And if Holden paid more for supplies and he paid more by $80, then supplies expense would increase by $80 and become $1,880. And if the reason why supplies expense has increased is because it came from the owner's personal pocket, then Holden's capital investment would increase by the same $80 and become $4,080. From the left panel, we click Accounting, Chart of Accounts. Then we scroll down to Holden's Capital Investment right here. And in this row, we click the Register window. Now again, these are the only 3 transactions we had for Holden's Capital Investment. But we're going to click Add Journal Entry and record the transaction we just showed. Now, the date was January 27, 2024 is our little story. We put in the reference number and the account, in this case, SU, for supplies expense. The payee is OF for Office Max, and the amount that the equity is increasing is the amount of the supplies that we purchased, $80. When we click Save, and then we click Reports, Trial Balance, we see the results are exactly as what we expected. Holden's capital investment increased to $4,080, and supplies expense increased to $1,880. Now, let's do a second example. Let's imagine on January 28, Holden paid $120 from his personal non-business credit card for a company delivery from UPS, and that's slip number 1212. What will be the result in the trial balance after recording this transaction? Well, we have more delivery expense by $120, So delivery expense will increase to $2,480. And the reason why we have more delivery expense is because Holden invested more into the company. That means that Holden's capital investment will also increase by $120 and become $4,200. We click Accounting, Chart of Accounts, and then we click the Holden's capital investment. Across the same row, we click View Register. Now we're going to click Add Journal Entry, and the date will be January 28th of 2024 in our little story. That's the reference number, and in this case, we are paying to UPS, it's right there, and we're paying for DEL delivery. And the amount we're paying always goes in the increase column. $120, click Save. Now, when we click Reports, Trial Balance, we see the results are exactly as what we expected. Holden's capital investment increased to $4,200, and delivery expense increased to $2,420. And now we'll close with a third example. Let's imagine on January 29th, Holden paid $300 from his personal non-business bank account for a company equipment repair job from our good friend Rex Repair, and that's the check number. So what will be the result in the trial balance when we record this transaction? Well, the company has $300 more in repair expense, so repair expense will increase to $1,300. And since Holden invested $300 more from his personal pocket, Holden's capital investment increases to $4,500. So what do? We click Accounting, Chart of Accounts. We now scroll down to Holden's capital investment, just like we did before, and in the same row, we click View Register. Now, of course, we add journal entry, and we put the date. The date in this case is January 29th of 2024. The last transaction will do. And the person whom we paid in this case is Rex Repair Shop, and we paid for RE repair expense. The amount that we paid is $300. Now, keep in mind whether the owner writes a check from their personal account, whether they use their personal cash, or whether they paid from a bank account or even a credit card account. It doesn't matter. Whatever the transaction number on the paper receipt shows, that's what you put here. And if it's a check number, you put the check number here. When we click Save, we can go back to Reports, Trial Balance, and the result is exactly as what we expected. Repair expense became $1,300, and Holden's capital investment became $4,500.
Chapter 15, The Final Project.
This is what the trial balance should look like right before you begin this exercise. It's the results of all the transactions that we entered in the entire course. You must make sure that your numbers are the same as mine before you begin the practical project exercise. You should also double-check your transaction list by customer for more details to make sure that your numbers are the same. This is also the transaction list by vendor before we begin the project. And if you compare this one by one to yours, you'll see if you recorded everything with the proper detail. And during this video, you may need to pause and keep the video at a specific moment in time to either compare to your numbers or at least to read off the transactions while you do the exercise. Now here are the first transactions that you'll enter as part of this video exercise. There's only 13 of them, and these transactions are exactly the same as the transactions that we recorded all during the course. And if you forget how to record any one particular transaction, you should go back to the part of the course where we learned that type of transaction and then come back here and record it the same way. Now, when you finish the first set, this is what your trial balance should look like. And when you're done, compare each of the numbers here to each of the numbers in your trial balance, and if there are any differences, you must use what we learned in the course to find and fix your mistakes so that your trial balance is the same as mine. And of course, it helps to see the transaction list by customer after the first set, so you can compare yours to mine to see if you need to make any changes. And of course, you should also compare your transaction list by vendor to my transaction list by vendor. And of course, I cannot fit the whole thing on one screen. So let's pause the video if you want to compare this to yours. And the second page of the transaction list by vendor is shown here. You can pause again if you want to make sure that it's all the same. Now, here's the interesting part. I'm giving you now a set of 6 bonus transactions, and I assert that even though we did not exactly and specifically do these transactions, you should be able to do them from your knowledge and understanding of the course. Think about each one, think about the situation, and think about what windows to record them into and how. I'm absolutely sure that if you give yourself time with each of these, you should be able to record them. And after you record these, this is what your final trial balance should look like after recording everything in the course. And I know you'll remember how to find and fix any differences so that when you finish, your trial balance looks exactly like mine. It may also help you to see the transaction list by customer so that you can compare important details if you have any differences. And that should also help you find and fix mistakes if you have any. And this is page 1 of the absolute final transaction list by vendor. And you can pause it here if you need to. And here is the transaction list by vendor, the second page, showing everything up to the last transaction in the course. So I wish you good luck with the exercise, and I'm here if you have any questions. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way till the end. I know that this knowledge will help you. And just remember, if you need anything else regarding QuickBooks, just click on the kitty to come to the main channel page where you can choose from hundreds of other QuickBooks and QuickBooks Online topics, just in case there's anything else in QuickBooks that you need to learn. I know the channel page will help you, and please stay in touch.